Big Four interviews aren't technical. There's no accounting exam, no case study, no test of your technical knowledge. They're almost entirely behavioral, which sounds easier until you realize most people have no idea how to prepare for a behavioral interview effectively. I went through the Big Four interview process, got the offer, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I prepared and what actually made the difference. Not generic interview advice, the specific things that work. First, let's establish what you're actually walking into, because understanding the format changes how you prepare. Most Big Four firms run a 2-round interview process. The first round is typically one interview, sometimes remote, sometimes in person, depending on the firm and your location. It's primarily behavioral, getting a first impression and assessing whether you can hold a professional conversation. If you advance, you'll have a second round interview, often with a partner or senior leader at the firm. Some firms also host office visits around this time, part social, part evaluation. You're meeting the team and they're watching how you carry yourself outside of a formal interview setting. The whole process is behavioral from start to finish. They already know you can do the technical work from your resume and GPA. What they're evaluating is whether you're someone they can put in front of a client, work with during a stressful busy season, and trust to represent the firm professionally. Every behavioral interview question is best answered using a framework called STAR: Situation, Task, Action, Result. Situation: briefly set the context. Where were you? What was happening? Task: what was your specific responsibility in that situation? Action: what did you actually do? This is the most important part and where most people spend too little time. Be specific about what you personally did, not what the team did. Result: what was the outcome? Quantify it where possible. Here's why this matters. Behavioral interviewers are trained to listen for this structure. When your answer has a clear situation, a specific task, a detailed action, and a concrete result, it signals that you're organized, self-aware, and can communicate clearly under pressure. When your answer is vague and rambling, it signals the opposite, regardless of how good the underlying story actually was. The mistake most candidates make is spending too much time on the situation and not enough on the action. The interviewer doesn't need a 5-minute backstory. They need to understand what you specifically did and what happened as a result. Keep the situation brief. Go deep on the action. Practice saying your answers out loud, not just thinking through them in your head, actually saying them out loud. The first time you say a story out loud, it will be noticeably worse than the 10th time. You want to hit the interview on rep 10, not rep 1. Here's my specific preparation approach. I built a bank of 5 to 6 strong stories from my experience that could flex to answer multiple question types. The questions you'll almost certainly get in some form. Tell me about a time you worked in a team and had a conflict or disagreement. Tell me about a time you had to manage multiple competing deadlines. Tell me about a failure or mistake and what you learned from it. Tell me about a time you took initiative or went above and beyond. Tell me about a time you had to adapt to a significant change. You don't need a different story for every possible question. A good story about leading a group project can answer questions about leadership, conflict resolution, communication, and time management depending on how you frame it. That's why 5 to 6 flexible stories beats 20 narrowly specific ones. Where do you find stories if you don't have much work experience? School projects, club leadership, part-time jobs, volunteer work, internships. The content of the story matters less than the clarity of your STAR structure and the specificity of what you personally did. A story about resolving a conflict in a class group project is completely valid if you tell it well. One story you absolutely need: a genuine failure or mistake with a real lesson learned, not a fake weakness dressed up as a strength. Interviewers have heard "I worked too hard" 1,000 times. A real story about something that went wrong, what your role was in it, and what you genuinely changed afterward is memorable and signals self-awareness. One thing that separated the candidates who got offers from the ones who didn't, in my experience, was genuine, firm-specific knowledge. Interviewers can tell immediately when someone has done real research versus when someone Googled the firm for 5 minutes the night before. Real research means knowing the firm's recent news, understanding which service lines they're emphasizing, having a specific reason why you want that firm versus the other 3. Practically, read the firm's recent press releases and news. Understand their current strategic priorities. Know which office you're interviewing for and something specific about that office or market. If you know the name of the partner interviewing you, look them up on LinkedIn and understand their background. Then, use that research naturally in your answers. Not in a forced way, but when they ask why this firm specifically, you should have a real answer that references something specific, rather than generic statements about culture and growth opportunities that apply to every firm equally. Most candidates treat the end of the interview, when they ask if you have questions, as a formality. It's not. It's one of the highest leverage moments in the whole conversation. Asking generic questions like, "What's the culture like?" or "What does a typical day look like?" signals that you haven't done your research and aren't genuinely curious. Asking specific, thoughtful questions signals intellectual curiosity and genuine interest. Good questions to ask. Ask about their specific career path. What brought them to this firm? What's kept them here? What's changed in their time there? People love talking about their own experience, and it makes the conversation feel genuine rather than transactional. Ask about the specific team or engagement types you'd be working on. Ask what they think separates the people who advance quickly from the ones who struggle in the first year. That question specifically tends to get candid, useful answers and signals that you're thinking seriously about your development. Have 3 to 4 questions ready. You probably won't get through all of them, but having options means you can adapt based on what's already been covered in the conversation. A few specific mistakes I saw or heard about from people who went through recruiting at the same time. Over-rehearsing to the point of sounding robotic. There's a version of preparation that makes you worse, when every answer sounds like it was memorized from a script. The goal is to know your stories well enough that you can tell them naturally, not recite them word for word. Conversational beats polished every time. Underselling themselves out of false modesty. When the question asks what you did, say what you did. Don't deflect to the team, don't minimize your contribution. Own your role in the story clearly and confidently. Ignoring the social components. Office visits and informal parts of the recruiting process are still evaluations. The conversation at dinner before the formal interview matters. How you treat the administrative staff matters. People are watching and forming impressions the entire time, not just in the interview room. Not sending follow-up notes. After every interview, send a short thank you email or LinkedIn message within 24 hours. Reference something specific from the conversation. Most candidates don't do this. The ones who do are remembered. Big Four interviews are very learnable. The format is consistent, the questions are predictable, and the preparation approach is straightforward once you understand what they're actually evaluating. Build your story bank, practice out loud, do real firm research, and show up as a genuine version of yourself rather than a rehearsed one. Subscribe to the Audit Trail for more on Big Four recruiting, accounting careers, and everything that actually matters when you're navigating this path. See you in the next one.